Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back. In this video, we are going to understand how to implement JWT Authentication Server from scratch in Spring Boot. We are going to break down whole implementation into 5 sections or 5 flows. First flow is regarding the user registration. Then we are going to understand the login flow. Then we are going to understand authentication and authorization of token. Then we are going to understand refresh token flow, and finally we are going to understand the role-based authorization. So this video is going to be complete implementation of JWT Authentication Server from scratch. We will develop, test, and finally going to Dockerize our application. All the resources will be available in the description as well as in the comment section of this video. Before starting the implementation, a humble request: if you still not subscribed to this channel, then do hit that subscribe button and also hit that like button to help the algorithm so that this video reach out to more people. First, we are going to start with the registration phase. Now in this phase, user needs to register itself in the system. Why? Because user wants to access the system, and this can only be done if the system knows about you or the user. So in this phase, user is going to provide the credentials like email and password. Then system is going to save that information securely. You can think of this registration phase as the generating source of truth. Now let us first understand this user registration flow, and then we are going to implement it. We will have one authentication controller. So this will receive this register request or user register request. This request will contain the credentials like full name, email, password, DOB, etc. etc. Okay. Then this authentication controller is going to pass that request to user service, and then this user service is going to check whether this user already exists in the system or not. So if the user is not present, then that means it is a new user, and then system is going to create and save the user details in the database. Right? Now, one important point over here is passwords are not stored in plain text form. They are stored in the hashed format. Now, why hashing is done? Let's understand that. Right. We don't want to store passwords in plain text. Okay. Now, you can think that we can use encryption, right? But the problem is that suppose if someone got the unauthorized access of the database and somehow also got the access of the encryption key, then that person can decrypt those passwords and use them for unethical purpose, right? And that we don't want. So this is why this encryption is avoided. Now why hashing? Hashing is one-way process. Now why it is one way? Let's understand that. Now we have this plain text, and this plain text is passed to this hashing algorithm. Now this hashing algorithm is going to generate one hashed text. It is of fixed length. Okay. Now if we again pass this hashed text to this hashing algorithm, then we will not get the plain text back. So this is a one-way process. Now in this case, if someone got the unauthorized access of the database also, then that person won't be able to decrypt those passwords. So that is why hashed passwords are saved. Now let us quickly generate one Spring Boot project. For this authentication server, we need the Spring Security, Spring Web, Spring Data JPA, PostgreSQL, Spring Data Redis, and Lombok. So these are the dependencies that we need from here. There are few dependencies that we need to add manually, so we are going to add them later on. Now let us quickly generate this project and open this project in IDE. So this is the project. Now before making any changes, let's do one thing. Let's first initialize the Git repo so that we can track our changes. Now we are going to make the initial commit also, right? So we have made one initial commit, and that is all that we need to do in this terminal. So we can clear this off and we can close this terminal. Now in order to save the information of the user, we need to have one user entity. So let's create one. We are going to have one package that is model, and inside this we are going to create one class that is app user. So this is our user entity. Now we are going to implement one interface, and that interface is user details. Now, why we are implementing this interface, you can think of this as the contract or the definition of user that Spring security framework expects from us. So that is why we are implementing this interface. Now let us add the methods that we need to implement. Before implementing these methods, let us add the properties for this user entity. So we are going to have these properties. So ID will be acting as the primary key to identify the user uniquely. Then we have the full name to store the full name of the user. Then we have this username field. You can think of this as the email field. Then we have the password field to store the password, and our user can have multiple roles. So we are also storing the list of user roles. Okay, so this is the list of user roles. Then we want to also store that at what time this user entity is created. So for that we have created at field. So these are the fields that we need. Now in order to map this class to database table, we need to mark this class with entity. So let's do that. Now when we are mapping any class to the database table, then we need to specify the primary key or the ID field. So this ID field is going to be our primary key, and we need to also specify that how the value will be generated. So we need to tell the strategy. Okay, so this is the strategy. We are going to use the UUID strategy for generating the value for this ID column, automatically generating the value of this ID column. Right now, we need the getters and setters for these fields. Now let us quickly add all the annotations. Now we are going to use the Lombok annotations for that. Now let us implement these methods. So first we are going to start with the username. So we are not going to do anything over here. We are going to simply return the username, and similarly we are going to do for the password. Now over here, this get authority. This get authority is nothing but the list of user roles. Okay, now we are storing this as the list of a string, but we have to return the collection or the list of granted authority, right? So we need to convert this list of string into this collection of granted authority. Now this granted authority is interface. So we are going to use this simple granted authority, which is the implementation of this. Okay, now how we can convert this? So we can simply make one stream of this roles list, and then we can map the element. Okay, and we can return this list. Now this lambda can be converted into method reference. So let's do that. Right, so this is a concise way of writing that lambda expression. All right, so we have implemented this app user or the user entity. Now let us set up the database, and let's check that whether this table is getting created or not. Basically we are checking that basically we are going to check whether the connection between our application and database is properly done or not. Okay, now before adding any database related configuration, let's make one commit. Now first of all, let us create one instance of database. So I'm going to use the Docker for that. Now I'm going to create the instance of this Postgres SQL database. Okay, so let me quickly create the container for this. So we are going to name this container as the auth server db, and we need to set up a few more things, like we need to set the ports that we want to expose. So by default the port of this is 5432. So we want to expose that port so that we can make the connection with this database. Then we need to set some environment variables. We need to tell that what will be the username, what will be the default database name of this Postgres SQL database. Okay, now we need to specify the username, password, and the default database name for this. Okay, so these are the properties, these are the variables that we need to set. Right, now let's apply this and run this. Okay, so our database instance is up and running. Now before adding the configuration, let's do one thing. Let's connect to this database. So we are going to use this dbeaver tool, right? And we are going to make one connection. So I have this auth server connection. I'm going to make changes in this only. So over here we need to provide the URL. Now everything will be same except the database name. So over here this database name will be auth.db, because we have provided the name this only, that is auth.db, and password is admin, sorry, username is admin, and then password is password only. Okay, so let's test this connection. Okay, so it is connected, and let us open this. Okay, now let's add the configuration related to this database. So we are going to open this application.properties file, but we are not going to use this properties file. We're going to use the YML. So let me convert this into YML. We can select this while we were generating the project, but if we have not selected it over there, then we can simply make changes over here only. So there is no issue in that. Okay, now for this database related properties, we are going to use the environment variables, and how to set up these environment variables we are going to see in some time. Then over here we are telling that we want to use the Postgres SQL dialect. That means the queries should be generated according to this Postgres SQL database, right? And we have set up this DDL auto to update, because we want that if we change anything in our entity, so that should be reflected in the database. And we have also turned on this show SQL as true, because we want to see that what all queries are being used, right? So these are the properties that we have added. Now to add the environment variables, what we need to do is we need to create one .env file. So this env file will be at the root of this project. Okay, so this thing we have to make sure. We can also store it in separate folder also, but we need to specify this env file at the time of running this application. And how to add this env file to configuration, run configuration, that we are going to see, okay, in some time. Now in this file we are going to add these properties. So let me quickly add the name of these variables and paste it over here. Now for this db URL, we are going to open the dbeaver, and we are going to copy the URL from here only, and we are going to paste it over here, and username is admin, and password is password only. Okay, now we have added the environment variables. Now before running this application, let us modify run configuration. Now we have to select the environment file over here. So we will click on this browse button, and we will select our .env file and click apply, then OK, and now we will run our application. Okay, so we can see details related to our database connection. So that means the connection is successful. Now we want to add a few more properties, like we want to specify the maximum pool size, because we don't want so many connections to be opened by default. Okay, so we are going to reduce the number of connections that will be opened by default. So for that we are going to set one property. Let me add it in the application.yml file. Right, so by default we want only 5 connections. Now let me run this application. Okay, so this application is running perfectly. That means the connection is successful. Okay, now let's make the commit again. Now let's check whether this table is created or not, this app user table is created or not. So we are going to refresh this connection. Yes, so this table is created. Now let us quickly add the repo also, so that we can perform the operations. So this is going to be the interface. We don't need to provide the implementation. We just need to extend the JPA repository, and over here we need to specify the entity. So our entity is app user, and the ID type of this entity. So that is the UUID, right? So for now, that much we have to do for this repo. Now let us create the controller, authentication controller. So for that, we are going to create one package, that is the controller package, and inside this, we are going to create the auth controller or the authentication controller. So the mapping for this is going to be /API/auth. And now let's add the register endpoint. So this register user is going to be a post method, okay, and it is going to take the register request as the request body. Now let's create one package, and that is going to be DTO package, and inside that we are going to create this register request class. Now we are going to make this as the record because we just want to use this class to transfer the data, to exchange the data. Okay, so let's make this as the record, and the fields that we want are full name. So first we need the full name, then we need the username, and then we need the password. So that's all, these fields we need. Okay, so in this diagram we can see that we will get this register request, and then we will pass this to user service. So now let us create this user service. So we will have one dependency of user service, and this user service is going to have one method, that is register user, and we are going to pass this request to this method, and this will register the user, and then we can simply return the status as the user is created. Okay, so let's do that. For now we are not returning any body, so we will add the body later on. Now let's create this user service. So let us create one package, and that is going to be service package, and inside this we are going to create this user service. So this is going to be an interface, so let's add this to service package, and we are going to create one more package, that is going to be user, and we'll move this user service inside this user package. Okay, now let's get back to auth controller, and we are going to add the method, this register user method, in this user service. Okay, now let's resolve this problem. So we need to add one annotation, that is required args constructor, so that one constructor will be generated for all these dependencies. Okay, now this user service interface is going to extend, it is going to extend one more interface, and that is user details service. Now why I'm extending this interface, because we are going to use this service with Spring Security, and in Spring Security we have a way to access the details of the user, and that way is this user detail service. So that is why we are extending this user service with user detail service. Okay, now let's create one implementation of this. We are going to implement the user service interface, and we are going to mark this as service class. Okay, let's add the methods that we need to implement. Okay, you see that we are getting this load user by username method. So this is this method we got from that user detail service. Okay, now over here we need to inject the app user repo, because we want to use that. We want to save this user. If this is a new user, so we want to save the details of that user to the database. Okay, so for that we need the app user repo. Now first we are going to check whether user is already present or not, user exists or not. Okay, so for that we are going to use one method, that is exist by not id but by username. Okay, so we are treating this username also as the unique. Now we have to make one change in this entity. We have to mark this field as the unique, right? So this is required. Now over here we are going to simply pass the username. Username is here nothing but the email. Okay, now let's create this method, and this method is going to return the boolean. Now we don't need to implement this method. The implementation of this will be auto generated. Now we need one variable, so let's create one variable for this, and we are going to check if user exists. So we are going to check if user exists, then we are going to simply throw one exception. Now we can throw a simple runtime exception, or we can create custom exception. So here we are going to create the custom exception. So we are going to create user already exists exception, and over here we are going to simply pass one message like username already present. Okay, now we are going to create one more package so that we can create this exception. Now we need the exception package, and we are going to create the class for this inside this exception package. Okay, and this is going to extend the runtime exception, right? And over here we are going to simply call the constructor super, and we are going to pass this message. Okay, now we are throwing this exception, so we need a way to handle these exceptions. Now for that we are going to create one global exception handler. So let's create that. We are going to mark this with the REST controller advice. So that is the way to specify that this class will be acting as the global exception handler. Now we need to add some methods. So first we are going to add one method that is going to handle the exception type only. Okay, so it is going to handle all kinds of exceptions, and we will mark this method with exception handler. And over here we are going to specify the class that that this method is going to handle. Okay, now we need one entity, we need one class for all the API responses in case of error. Okay, so for that we are going to create one DTO, and that is going to be API response. Again we are going to convert this into record, and this API response is going to have the status of the response, okay, then the message and the timestamp. Okay, now we are going to create one API response over here. So let's create one, and the status is going to be internal server error, right? And message we can simply pass the exception message, and let's add the timestamp over here. Okay, so this is going to our API response. Now what we can do is we can extract this generating API response to one method so that we can utilize this in other exception handler. Okay, let's extract this, right? And now we are going to simply return this, and we are going to wrap this before returning this API response. So we are going to wrap this with the response entity. Okay, so we need to modify this method. So this is going to return this API response, right? Now we don't need this build, so we can remove this. Okay, so this is going to handle all kind of exceptions. Now we want some handler to handle specific type of exceptions. Like in our case we want to handle this user already exists exception. Okay, so we are going to create another handler, and we are going to make changes. Now we are going to change the status to conflict, and rest will be same. Okay, so this handler is going to handle this user already exists exception. Okay, for now we need these handlers only. If we need more handlers, then we can add them later on. Okay, let's get back to user service. Now we have checked that if user exists, so we are going to throw this exception. Otherwise we have to add the user. Now let's see how we are going to add the user. Now let's create one new user. Okay, now as we have discussed that we are not going to save the password in plain text, so for that we need the password encoder. Okay, now we need this dependency. So first let us add this dependency, and now we need to create the bean for this. So we are going to create one config package, and inside this let's create one security config. So this is the configuration file, so we need to mark this with configuration, and let's create one password encoder B. So this is going to return the bcrypt password encoder. So that is what we are going to use, right? And you have to mark this method with B. Okay, now let's get back to user service, and now over here we are passing the list of user roles, and for that let's do one thing. Let's create the user roles that we want in our system, in our application. So inside this app user only, we are going to create one enum. So let's create one enum. So that is going to be user roles, and we want two roles only. So first one is going to be role underscore user, and another is going to be guest role. Okay, so we just want two kind of roles, right? Now we have created this new user. Now we just have to save this. So we are going to use the save method, and we are going to pass this new user, right? So that is it. That all we need to do for registering this user. Okay, now let's test this registration flow. So you can open any HTTP client, and we will use that to send the request. Okay, now I have already created the collection for this auth server. Now we are going to first use this register user. Okay, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, now this base URL is this localhost only, and this is the request body. Now before sending the request, let me run this application. Okay, now let me send one request. Okay, we are getting 401 unauthorized, and why we are getting this? Because security module is added, and by default all the endpoints are secured. So we need to configure the security filter chain, and for the time being, let us open all the endpoints. So we are going to create one bean of security filter chain, and over here we are going to need the HTTP security. So this is the builder, you can say, for the security filter chain, and we are going to mark this method with @b. Now we are going to set this property, that is authorize HTTP request. Now we are going to open all the requests, so we are going to permit all the requests, and we are going to simply return HTTP security dot build. So this is going to build the security filter chain, right? Now let us start the application. Okay, let's again hit this endpoint. Okay, again we are getting 403 forbidden. Let's do one thing. For the time being, let us also disable the CSRF, and why I'm disabling this, that we are going to discuss later on. Okay, so we will discuss that why we are disabling this. So let's disable this for now. Okay, now this time we got the response 201. That means user is created. Now let's check in the database. So let me refresh this. Okay, so we can see the record over here. Now you can see that the password is not stored in the plain text format. So it is stored in the hashed format, right? So we have successfully implemented the registration flow. Now let's stop this application and first let us make one commit and then we will move further. Now before moving further, let us also check that we have created this global exception handler, right? So whether this is working or not. So let's check that also. So we are going to send the same request again. Okay, so we are getting this username. Okay, so we are not getting the username that we have to fix. So let us quickly fix that. Okay, so we have to use the formatted, and over here we have to pass the username. So from the request we'll get the username, right? And now this time we will get the username. Okay, so this time we are getting the username also. So this is also working fine. Now let us understand the login phase. So we are registered in the system and now we want to access our resources, or the user wants to access their resources. Now how this system is going to understand that the person or the user who is trying to access the resource is the actual owner of this. Now user needs to prove their identity in order to access the system, again in order to access the resource. User is going to pass the same credentials that they have used during the registration phase. Then system is going to check them against the stored credentials, and if they match, then the system is going to issue one token so that user don't have to enter credentials again and again in order to access the system or access the resource. This token is going to be temporary, so for short period of time user can access the system or access the resource without entering the credentials again and again. We can think of this login phase as the token generation. Now let's understand this login flow and then we are going to implement this flow, right? So we have the authentication controller. So this controller is going to receive this login request this time. So this login request will have the credentials like email and password. It does not require all the details of the user. It is just going to need the username and email, username and password. Okay, then this authentication controller is going to pass this request to authentication service. Then this authentication service is going to delegate the authentication responsibility to this provider manager. So from where we will get this provider manager? So this provider manager is present in this security module. So we will use this from there. Okay, so we have this provider manager. Now this provider manager is going to find out the correct authentication provider. So what is authentication provider? Authentication provider is basically tells that how we are going to authenticate the credentials that we are receiving in the request. So we can have different type of authentication providers. So over here what we need the DAO authentication provider. Basically this is nothing but the username and password token authentication provider. So it is going to match the username and password with the stored credentials. Okay, so we are going to pass the unauthenticated token to this authentication provider. Then it is going to use this user details service to check the credentials, and then it is going to return the authenticated token. Now this authenticated token is going to have two things, principal and the roles. Now what is principal? So you can think of the user entity only. This is the principal and the roles of this user. So this will be returned back to this provider manager, and this provider manager is going to return it back to authentication service. Now we are going to generate the access token. So we need this JWT utils because we are using the JSON web token. So for that we need this JWT utils. So we will send the subject or principal and roles to this, and we are going to generate the access and a refresh token. Okay, so we are going to generate two tokens, and why we need this refresh token we are going to understand it in some time, right? So this JWT util is going to have the access to this secret key, using which it is going to generate the token and sign the token, right? And after generating this, it is going to return back to this authentication service this access and refresh token, and this refresh token will be cached in this Redis cache. Okay, so that we are going to see that how we are going to set up this thing when we will implement this refresh token thing. Okay, so over here we have what we have the access token and refresh token now, and then we are going to simply create one authentication response, and we will return it back to the client or the user. Okay, so this is how this login flow will work. Now let's start implementing this. Now let's create the login endpoint. Again, this is going to be a post method, and this is going to get this login request as the request body. So let's create this class inside the DTO package. Again, we are going to convert this into record, and we just need two properties that are username and password. Okay, now we are going to use this authentication service to log in the user and get the tokens. So we need this authentication service, right? So we are going to create this, and we are going to pass this login request over here. Okay, and in return what we will get is the auth response, and this auth response contains both of the tokens, access as well as the refresh, and this is what we are going to return. So let's create the response entity. Right, now we need this auth service, so let's create this service. First let us add the dependency of this auth service over here. Okay, now let's create the interface. We are going to create this inside the service.auth package. Okay, let's add this login method to this interface, and this is going to return the auth response. Now we need to create this auth response also, so we are going to create this inside the DTO package. Now this auth response is going to have access token, refresh token, and token type, and the token expiration type in seconds. Okay, so these four properties this auth response is going to have. Now let's create the implementation of this auth service. We are going to name it as username password auth service because we are using username and password for authenticating the user. It is going to implement auth service, and we have to mark this with service. We have also added this required arc constructor because we are going to add the dependencies also. Let's add the method that we need to implement. So we need to implement this login method. Now how the flow will work, let's understand that. Now we need to create one username and password token, right? So this class is already present in this security module, so we are going to use that class only, username and password token, and we are going to create one unauthenticated object or the token. Okay, and we are going to pass the credentials. So we are going to pass the username and the password. Now over here we don't have to encode the password before passing it, because the authentication provider that we are going to use, it is going to automatically check the password after encoding. Okay, so that we don't need to do over here. We just need to create the token. So this is the unauthenticated token. Let me add the comment also. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to get the authenticated token. Okay, so we are going to get the authenticated token, and how we are going to get that? We are going to need the authentication manager, and using that authentication manager we are going to authenticate this unauthenticated token. Okay, let's add the dependency for this authentication manager. So from here we will get the authenticated token, and now we need to generate the access as well as refresh token. Right now, before implementing method for this generating access and refresh token, let's create the bean for this authentication manager in this security config. So we are going to create the bean for this. Now this authentication manager is nothing but the provider manager that we have seen in the diagram. So this provider manager is the implementation of this authentication manager only. Okay, now we are going to create one provider manager, and let me extract it to one variable, because we need to provide the list of authentication provider. Right now we need the DAO authentication provider, so this is also present. We just need to create the bean of this. Let's create the bean of this, or we can simply make it as authentication provider. Okay, and this is going to return the DAO authentication provider. We have to mark this with bean. Okay, now we have to pass the user details service to this DAO authentication provider. So this provider is going to use that service to find out the details of the user from the database. Okay, so we need to inject user details service, and also we need to set the password encoder. Okay, so we need to set the password encoder, otherwise the credentials will not be matched. Now we are going to inject this DAO authentication provider over here, and we are going to create one list of authentication provider, because later on we are going to add one more authentication provider. So let's create one list for that, and we are going to pass this list to this provider manager. Okay, let's make it list of authentication provider. Right, so we have created the bean for this authentication manager. Now let's get back to authentication service. Right, now let's understand that how we are going to generate the access token and the refresh token. Now we need to add this dependency. So open the Google and search for this JWT, and open this repository Java JWT. We are going to use this dependency for JWT. Now in this readme, come to this installation part and click on this Maven, or if you are using Gradle, then you can go with this Gradle option. So we are going to simply copy this, and we are going to paste it in form.xml, and we will sync the Maven changes. Right, so we have added the dependency for this JWT. Now we are going to create one util class. For that we are going to need one util package, and inside this we are going to create this JWT utils. Now this is going to be an interface, and we are going to implement the static default methods, because we don't need the instance of this. Okay, so that's why we have created the interface for this. Now let us get back to auth service, and over here what we are going to do is we are going to use this authenticated token to get the username, which will act as the subject for this access token, and we will also get the list of roles from this authenticated token only. So let's extract both of these things. So as we have discussed that this authenticated token will contain the principal and the authorities, right? So this principal is nothing but the user entity only. Now what we have to do over here is we have to typecast it. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to check whether this is the instance of app user, and we are going to give the variable name also so that we can use it. And if it is the instance of app user, then we are going to need the username, right? Else we can simply get the empty string, blank string. Okay, and we can save this whole thing in one variable, that is the username. And similarly we are going to do this for the user roles. Now we need this time the authorities. Okay, or else we are going to simply return the empty list. But we need to convert these authorities in list of strings. Okay, so for that we are going to do what? We are not going to use this get authorities method. We are going to simply use the get rules, because this is nothing but the list of roles, but it is simply the list of strings. Okay, so we can use that one. Now let's create one variable and let's name it as the roles. Now we are going to use this JWT utils to generate the access token. We need to pass the subject, that is going to be username. Then we need to pass the roles, and then we need to also pass the secret key over here, which is going to be used for signing the tokens, and also the expiration time of this access token. So first of all, let us add these dependencies. So we need the secret key. Let's add the dependency for this secret key. Then we need this expiration time. For that we are not going to directly inject this. What we are going to do is, let's do one thing. Let's add one more config, and that is going to be JWT config, and this is going to be configuration properties, and we want to group all the properties. Now we want all the properties of group JWT. So this will contain the secret key. Okay, and it will also have the expiration time, so that will be in long, and this is the expiration time for access token expiration time. Now we need the getter and setter. Let's create them. Okay, now let's add these properties in this application.config file, in this application.yml file. So we have created one JWT group. We need the secret key. We are not going to directly pass the secret key over here. We are going to pass it as the environment variable. Okay, and then we have the expiration time access token. So let's keep the expiration time to 10 minutes. So we need to provide the time in seconds over here. So that is going to be 600, right? Now let's do one thing. Let us create one app config also, so that we can enable this configuration properties. So this is going to be a configuration file, and we need to enable the configuration properties, and we want this JWT config, right? Now let's get back to this auth service. Now we have the secret key, but this is not how we are going to provide the secret key. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's first provide the value of this key only, and then we can use that in our project. So we will open the env file and we will provide the key over here. So I'm going to use the open SSL library. So open SSL, and we are going to generate the random string of 64 bytes, and let me copy this and paste it over here. So this is our secret key. Right now we are going to create the bean of the secret key. So let's create one, and over here we need the JWT config, because from this config only we will get the value of secret key, and from that value we are going to create the object of the secret key, right? So we are going to use this method to create the secret key. We need the secret key in the form of bytes. Okay, and now we can simply return this. That's it. Right now we have the bean for the secret key. Let's get back to user auth service. Now we need this expiration time, so we are going to inject the JWT config only over here, and from this config we are going to get this expiration time. Okay, so let's get the expiration time of access token, and let's create one variable for this. Now let's create this method in JWT utils, and this is going to return one token that will be in the form of string only. Now let's create one more method, that is the generate access token, and this is going to be private method, private static method, and it is going to accept all these properties only, right? And from here we are going to simply call this method. That's it. Okay, now let's implement that how we are going to generate a token. So we are going to use the JWT dependency that we have added. Let's create one JWT builder. We are going to need this builder. So let's create the JWT builder. Now we want to first add the claims. Claims are nothing but the payload of this token, or you can say the information regarding the user. We are not going to pass the password of the user, but the details that is required for accessing the resource, those details only we are going to pass. Okay, so first we are going to pass the subject to whom this token belongs, right? Now to add the claims, we are going to need the builder for this claims also. So we will get it like this, and now we have to pass the subject. So the subject is going to be username. Then we need to pass the ID for this. So we will create one unique ID, random unique ID. Then we need the time at which this is issued. Okay, so let's create one variable which is going to capture the current time, and then we are going to simply create the date object from that. Okay, so this is the issued time, and now we need to set the expiration time also. Let's calculate it over here. Okay, and from this we can create another date object that is going to be our expiration time. Now we need to set one more field, that is the roles, and this is not available over here, so we need to use this add method, and we are going to add this roles. Right now let's build this claim, and we are going to pass this to this JWT token builder. Okay, now we need to provide the key using which this token will be signed. So we are going to use this method sign with, and over here we are going to provide this secret key, and finally we are going to use this compact method. This is going to return the token in the string format. Okay, now over here we have to change the method name. So this is going to be generate token, not generate access token, right? So this is how we are going to generate the token. Now let's get back to auth service, and from here we will get the access token. Now let's do one thing. Let's create the auth response, and we are going to set this access token for now, and we will not set the refresh token, and token type is going to be bearer. Okay, and we have to send the expiration time also, so we can use this variable only. Right, now we have successfully implemented till the access token. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's test this login endpoint with this access token only first, and then we are going to implement it further. So let's start this application, and this time we are going to log in. Okay, so we're going to hit this endpoint. Connection is refused. Let us check. So this DAO authentication provider is not there. We are getting this error. So let's check the configuration file. Okay, so we have created the authentication provider, this DAO authentication provider, and okay, so we are returning the bean type as authentication provider over here, and over here in this authentication manager we are using as the DAO authentication provider. So we need to change this thing. Now let me rerun that. Okay, so this time our application started successfully. Now let's hit the endpoint. Okay, so we are getting user detail service returned null. Okay, let's check. Let's open this user details service, user service. All right, so we have not implemented this method, so we need to implement this method. Okay, so this is going to be a simple method. We just need to find out the user by username. So let's create one method, find by username, and we're going to pass the username over here. Otherwise, so this method is going to return the optional. So if the value is not there, it is empty, we are going to simply throw one exception, and that is username not found exception. Right, so let us create this method, and this is going to be optional of app user. Okay, now let's run this application. Let's hope this time we get the access token. Right, so we got the access token. Now let me copy this access token and open the browser, and we are going to JWT.io. Okay, let's check the token. So you can see that we are getting the subject as the username, then the unique ID, issued time, expiration time, and the role of the current subject or the user. Right, so we are getting all these information over here in this payload, which is nothing but the claims. Okay, now if we will provide the secret key, our secret key over here, then this will be verified also. Let's do that thing also. So let's do that also. Let's copy this and let's paste it over here. Okay, so we are getting the message as a valid secret signature verified. Now let's stop this application, and before moving further, let us make one commit. Now before implementing the logic for refresh token, let us set up the Redis cache. So again, I'm going to use this Docker for creating the instance of this Redis. So let us quickly create one container for this also. We just need to expose the ports. So default port is 6379, so we are going to expose this port only. Let's run this. Okay, so this Redis instance is also up and running. Let us quickly check this thing also. Okay, so this Redis instance is working. Let's create one Redis related properties class. So let's name it as Redis props, and this is going to be configuration properties with the prefix Redis. Okay, and we need two properties only: simple host name and the port. That's it. Let's add the getter and setter as well, and we are going to add this over here in this enable configuration properties. Okay, so we can rename this JWT config to JWT properties. Okay, because these are the properties, configuration properties. Now to use this Redis, we need to create two beans. First one is the Redis connection factory to make the connection with this Redis. Okay, so let's create that bean. So we are going to use this latest connection factory and pass the host name and the port. And now we need the Redis template bean. Okay, so we are going to use this connection factory only, and using this we are going to create one Redis template. Right now we are going to save the refresh token over here. Okay, now why we are using Redis for refresh token? So access token are short-lived, they need to be refreshed. Now for refreshing the access token, we don't want the user intervention again, so they should be refreshed automatically. Now we can't just generate the new token just because user provided the refresh token to the system, right? Checks need to be done whether the refresh token belongs to the same user or not. Is it the same refresh token that was provided by the system or not? So some checks need to be done, and that is why we are using, and that is why we are using this Redis cache. And this Redis is fast enough to perform these operations, so that is why this becomes an ideal choice for this storing the refresh tokens. Okay, now let's create one model for saving the refresh token. So we are going to create one class inside this model package only. Now this ID is going to be of this Spring Framework dot data annotation. It will be not of this Jakarta persistence, right? So this thing we need to ensure. Right, we have created one hash of refresh tokens, and we are going to provide the TTL or time to live with this variable. Okay, and now why we are providing this? Because we don't want to store the refresh token for longer period of time. Once the TTL is over, so that should be automatically deleted, because we don't need to store the refresh tokens. Okay, now we are going to need the expiration for this refresh token also, so let's add the time over here. Now let's make the changes for this refresh token. Now instead of this 10 minutes, let make the time to 10 hours. Okay, now we need to add this property in this JWT props. Right, now let's open this auth service. Again, we are going to create one method inside this JWT utils only. So let's change the method name to refresh token, and this refresh token is not going to have this rules. because it is just for authentication purpose, not for authorization. So we are removing these rules, and over here we are going to pass the expiration time of refresh token. Okay, so let's extract it as variable. Right now, let's create this method. Again, we are going to use this method only, and over here what we are going to do is we are going to add one more property, and that is going to be is refresh token. And why we are adding this? Because when this generate token method is generating the access token, then we are going to add the claims, otherwise we are not going to add it. Okay, so that is why. Okay, so if this is the refresh token, then we are going to simply provide the empty list, otherwise we are going to provide the list of rows. So that is all we need to do over here, and we can rename this to expiration time. Okay, and now we can simply make change in this generate token. So this is not the refresh token, it is the access token, and this one is the refresh token. So we are going to set it true over here, and let's pass the expiration time of this refresh token. And we don't have this rule, so we are going to pass the empty list, or we can even pass the null. Okay, and this is going to be string. Right, now let's get back to our auth service, and from here we will get the refresh token, and we are going to simply pass that refresh token to this auth response. Right, so we have implemented this logic for refresh token also. Let's run the application and check whether we are getting the refresh token or not. Okay, so we got one exception. All right, so we need to provide the host name and the port for this Redis, right? So let us add them also. So again, we are going to use the environment variables only. Okay, now let's run this application. Okay, now let's again hit the login endpoint. Right, so this time we are getting the refresh token also. Let us again copy this and open the JWT debugger. We are going to paste it over here, and you can see that we are not getting the roles this time. Okay, now let's also check the value inside this Redis cache. So we are going to use the command line only. Okay, so this key array is empty, that means the value is not added. And let's see what we have missed. Okay, so we need to enable this Redis repository. So we have missed this one annotation. Now let's restart this application and again hit this endpoint. Let's again check for the keys. All right, so we have missed this part. We have not added the code for saving this refresh token. Okay, so we have missed that part. Let us quickly add that part also. Okay, so we are going to save this refresh token to this cache, right? And now what we are doing for this ID is we are encoding it using the base64 encoder. Okay, so that is how we are saving it. We don't want to save this in plain text, so that is why we are doing this. Right now we need this refresh token repository, so let's create this repository also, and we are going to create this inside the repo package. We need to move this to repo package, not, we don't want it over here, and we just need to extend the CRUD repository. Entity is refresh token, and key is string type. Right, Now let's restart the application. Let's again hit this endpoint and now let's check the Redis cache. Right, so this time we are getting the key. Okay, so let's copy this key and we are going to use this method. Right, so we can see that the token is a stored expiration time, ID, and the class information. So now this refresh token is getting stored. Okay, so now we are getting the proper response for this login endpoint. We are getting the access token as well as the refresh token. Now let's stop this application and let's make one commit. Now we are going to modify this register user a bit. We are going to actually return the auth response only. Okay, so what we are going to do is once the user is registered, then we are going to call the login method of this auth service, because we want that as soon as the user is registered, then the access token and the refresh token should be returned to that user or the client. Okay, right, so we have made this change over here. Let's quickly run this application and test this change. Let's change the username and hit this endpoint. Right, so this time we are getting the access token and the refresh token when we are registering the user. So this is also working fine. Okay, so let's stop this and we can make another commit. Let's understand authentication and authorization flow of the token. Right, so now we have the token, but again, the system is not going to allow just because you have the token or the user is having the token. System is going to validate that token and check whether user is having the permission to access the requested resource or not. And if everything goes fine, then system will simply allow the user to access their resources. So you can think of this authentication and authorization flow as a quick security check. Now let's understand this flow and then we are going to implement it. Now this time, instead of the controller, we are going to work with the filter. So we are going to have this JWT authentication filter. Now from where we are getting this filter? So when we add the Spring security module, so we get the security related filters. Before reaching any controller, this HTTP request has to pass through this filter chain and then only it reaches the controller if all the filters allow that request to pass. Okay, so we are going to add one of our own filter, that is going to be JWT authentication filter, and this filter is responsible for this authentication and authorization of the token. Now this filter is going to check whether the incoming HTTP request is having this authorization header or not. So this authorization header will contain the token that we received when we log in into the system, the access token. Okay, and if the token is not present, then this filter is going to simply pass the request to the next filter. You're not going to perform any checks. Okay, and if the token is present, then token will be extracted and it will be passed to this provider manager. Okay, so this provider manager is same that we have discussed in the login flow. Okay, but this time we are going to use the different token. Earlier we have used the username and password token, but now this time we are going to use our custom token, that is going to be bearer token, and we are going to pass this unauthenticated token to this bearer token authentication provider. Again, this is a custom class, so we are going to create this. So this is the authentication provider for this bearer token, right? So this bearer token is going to authenticate the token. So it is going to pass that bearer token with the help of JWT utils, and it is going to return the payload or the claims. Now, if the token is parsed, that means the authentication is successful. Now, with the help of this payload or the claims, we are going to know that what are the permissions of the user. and the information about the user, right? So this will return, this JWT utils will return this payload or the claims, and then we will create the authenticated token. So authenticated token will contain the principal, that is the information about the user, and the permissions of the user, that is nothing but the roles. We are going to return it back to this provider manager, and then this provider manager is going to return it back to this filter. Now this filter is going to set this authentication token in this security context holder. Now why we are setting this to the security context holder? Because we want to use the information of the currently logged in user inside our application, and this security context holder is going to help us. When we set the authenticated token to this security context holder, then we can simply inject the currently logged in user info, and if the authentication is not successful, then this filter is not going to allow that request to move to next filter. So that request will be returned from this filter only. Okay, so this is how this flow is going to work. Now let's implement this flow. Now let's create one secret text controller which we can access only when we are logged in into the system. So let's create one text controller. Okay, so we are going to have one method, that is the get secret text. Now this is going to be a get method, and what we are going to do is we are going to simply return the information of the currently logged in user. That is what we are going to do. Right now we don't have the information for this username. Okay, and from where we will get the information of this username? We will get the information of this username from the security context holder that we have discussed just now. Okay, and how we are going to get that, that we are going to discuss in some time. First, let us implement the whole flow, filter flow, and then we are going to get back to this and fix this method. Now let's set up the security filter chain first, and then we are going to implement the filter. Okay, so we have disabled this CSRF. Now why we have disabled this? Because this token is not stored in the cookie. The CSRF is related to session related authentication, in which the token is stored, or the session ID is stored inside the cookie, and that cookie is sent with every request. And now that we are not doing that thing, so we don't want this extra overhead, so that's why we are disabling this CSRF. Now the next thing that we are going to set up is the session management. So we are going to set the session creation policy as the stateless, because we don't want Spring Security Framework to create the HTTP sessions and save them, because these tokens are stateless. So we don't want to store any kind of information at the server side regarding the sessions. So let's make the session creation policy as the stateless. Now next, we are going to make all the endpoints secured except the authentication related endpoints. Okay, so we are going to make changes over here in this authorize HTTP request. Now we are going to restrict, we are going to make any request not permit all but authenticated, and we want that request that are of this authentication controller to be open, right? And we can do one thing, we can simply add this after the session management only, right? Now next thing is we have to add the filter. Now before adding the filter, let me show you all the default filters that are added just by adding this security module. So let me comment this out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the debugging mode for this web security module. Okay, right, let me run this application. Okay, so by default we are having this security filter chain, and you can see we have so many filters like CSRF filter, logout, username, password, authentication. So by default this authentication is used. Okay, and we have other filters also. Now what we want is we want our JWT authentication filter right before this username password authentication filter, because we want to use this token authentication before this username password authentication if we are allowing this username and password. But if we are not allowing this, so then also we need to add it before this filter, this username password filter. Right now we have to add the filter, so we are going to use add filter, and we are going to add the JWT authentication filter. Right now we are not having this filter, so we are going to create this filter and we are going to add it before username password authentication filter. Okay, now let's add this filter as a dependency. Okay, now let's create this class. So we are going to create one security package, and inside that only we are going to create this filter. Now this JWT authentication filter is going to extend the once per request filter. Okay, now over here we will get one method, that is the do filter internal. So we will get access to request, response, and the filter chain. Right, now let's make this as the component so that we can inject it wherever we want. Okay, so we have to use the add filter before method. Right, now one last thing we need to add over here, and that is the exception handling. So if there is any authentication related exception, so for that we are going to add one more exception handler. So we call that as the authentication entry point. So we are going to create one custom authentication entry point and we are going to use that. Okay, so let's first inject that. Right, so we have completed the configuration of the security filter chain. Okay, now let's implement this JWT authentication filter. So first we are going to extract the authorization header. Okay, so we have the access to this request object. We are going to use this to get the header, and we want the authorization header. Right, now this authorization header is going to contain the token like bearer, and then a space will be there, and then we will have the token. Okay, so we want to get this token only, we don't want this bearer thing, so we are going to remove this. So first let me create one variable for this header. Now let's create one method to extract the token. Right, so this method is going to take the authorization header, or simply the header. It is going to check whether it is blank or not. So if it is blank, it is going to return the empty optional. Otherwise, we are going to extract the substring. So this token is going to start with this index 7. So we will get the token. Okay, and we will return that. Right, now, so over here we are going to simply use this method to get the token. Then we are going to check whether this token is empty or not. So if this token is empty, then we are going to pass this request to next filter. Okay, so if the token is empty, then we are going to simply use this filter chain, and we are going to pass the request and response to next filter. Now the important thing about the filter is that when requests come from the client, so it passes through all the filters and it reaches the controller. Now when response is generated from the controller, so again that response is going to pass through all those same filters, and then it will reach the client. Now we don't want to perform any task when response is going through this filter. So what we are going to do is we are going to simply return over here. Right, and this is the flow if token is empty. Now let's see what we are going to do if we are having the token, we are having the bearer token. Okay, so now we are going to create one bearer auth token, just like the username password token. So this is our custom class. So we are going to create this, and we are going to create the unauthenticated token of this. Okay, now let's save this in variable. Right, now let's create this class. So this class is going to extend the authentication. Why? Because if you see, if let me open the username and password authentication. So this class is extending this abstract authentication token or this authentication interface, right? So Spring Security is expecting this, or the provider manager is expecting this authentication as the token, right? So that is why we are implementing it over here. So we need to not extend, we need to implement this authentication. So let's add the methods, or we can do one thing. So let's extend the abstract only. So then we have to implement less methods. So let's extend abstract authentication token. Now we just need to implement these two methods. Okay, now we are going to make the constructor of this class as a private, and we are going to have two things, that is the username and credential. So now over here, what is the username? So that we will extract from the token, and the credential is nothing but the token. Okay, now when we are talking about the unauthenticated token, so we just need the token, that's it. Okay, so let's create one static method, right? So we are not passing any authorities, any role, any username. We just passing the credential. And what is credential? Credential is the token, and we are marking this is authenticated as false because this is unauthenticated token, right? And similar to this, we are going to have one more method, and that is going to be authenticated method. Okay, now you see, when we are creating the authenticated token, so we are passing the role, username, and now we don't need this token. So we are simply passing the null over here, and we're marking this as the authenticated. Okay, so this is the bearer auth token class, and over here we need to implement these two methods also. So we are going to return the credentials. Credentials are nothing but the token, so we are going to use this variable only, credential. And what is principal? Principal is nothing but the username, right? So this is the bearer auth token class. Now let's get back to our filter class. Right now, what we are going to do is we are going to pass this token to authentication manager to authenticate this token, right? Similar that we have done in the case of when we are logging into the system. Okay, so it is similar to that. Now we need this authentication manager, so let's inject this. Now this is going to return the authenticated token, right? Now we need to tell this authentication manager that what type of authentication provider is required for authenticating this bearer or token, right? So we will go to the security config, and over here we are going to make some changes in this authentication provider list. Okay, so what we need one more authentication provider, and that is the bearer authentication provider, and we are going to add this to this authentication provider list. Okay, now let's create this class, and this class is going to implement the authentication provider interface. Okay, so we need to implement two methods. First one, this authenticate. So over here we are going to write the logic that how we are going to authenticate that token, and in this supports method we need to specify that this provider is supported is for the bearer auth token. Okay, so for this supports method we are going to simply check that whether the class that provider manager is checking is of type this bearer auth token or not. Okay, so that is only we are going to check, and we are going to use this method is assignable from, and over here we're going to pass this bearer auth token class. Okay, so this is how provider manager will get to know about this, right? Now let's understand that how we are going to authenticate the token. So first what we need is we need to parse the token. So let's use the JWT utils, and we're going to need one parse token method, and over here we are going to pass the credentials that we are getting. So credentials is nothing but the token for our bearer auth token class, right? So first we need to check whether this authentication is instance of this bearer auth token or not. Okay, so let's check if it is instance of this bearer auth token. So we are going to simply get the credentials. Okay, and these credentials we need to typecast to string, right? Else we are going to pass the empty string. Okay, now we need to also pass the secret key. Why the secret key is required? So because we have signed the token with the secret key, now to pass this token we also need this secret key. So again we need to pass it over here. Now let's create this method, and this is going to return the claims or the payload. Now first we need to create the JWT parser. So let's create one, right? And now we are going to parse the token. So this parse method is going to throw JWT exception if the token is not proper. So what kind of exceptions we can expect? Let's see. So it can be related to this expired JWT exception, invalid key, invalid claim, right? So we have different types of exceptions. So we are just for now interested in this expired JWT exception. So what we are going to do is we are going to add one more catch block for this expired JWT exception, so that we get to know that the JWT exception, so that we get to know about the token that it is expired. Okay, now we are going to use this class that is nonce expired exception. So this is extending this authentication exception only. So as we are creating the one exception handler for this authentication related exception, so that will be, so this class will be directly, this exception will be directly handled by that only, right? So we don't need to add this to global exception handler. Okay, so this is it. So this is how we are going to pass the token. Right now over here we are having this pass token, and it is returning what? It is returning the claims. Now every token is passed, that means half of the work is done, authentication part is done. And now what we have to do is we need to get the permission of the user or the roles of the user for authorization purpose. Okay, so we are going to get the username from this claims, and we want to extract the authorities or the roles from these claims. Now we need to convert, because we have the list of string, so we need to convert that list of string into list of this granted authority. So let's create one method for that, and we are going to create this inside this JWT utils only. So it is going to be a simple method, right? So we are getting the roles from this claims, and then we are checking whether it is of list or not. So if it is of list type, then we are simply mapping the role to this simple granted authority, and we are returning a list. And if it is not present, then we are simply returning the empty list, right? So this is what we have done over here. Okay, so we have the roles. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to create the authenticated token, right? So we need to return the authenticated bearer token. Okay, so we are going to pass two things. First is the username. So this is nothing but the principal that we have seen in the diagram. So we return two things, principal and the role. So this is the principal, and then we have the authorities or the roles. Okay, so we are returning the authenticated token. Right, now let's get back to authentication filter. Now we have this authenticated token. Now next what we are going to do is we are going to set this authenticated token to the security context holder, and after this we are going to simply pass the request and response to next filter. Okay, now over here we can do one thing. We can wrap this whole thing. Let's surround this with the try catch, and if we are getting this authentication exception over here, so what we can do is we can simply return from here only. We are not going to perform any logic after this. Okay, and before returning, what we are going to do is we are going to clear the security context, and we can move this statement at the last. Okay, right. So if we are getting any exception when we are authenticating this token, so we don't want the request to go to next filter. What we are doing is we are simply clearing the security context and we are returning from here only. Okay, so that is what we are doing over here. So this is how this authentication JWT authentication filter is going to work. Now let us get back to this text controller, and over here we are going to inject this authenticated token principal. Okay, so how we are going to inject? So there is one annotation, and that is authentication principal, and we know that our principal is nothing but the username, so that is of type string. So we are going to use that type, and from here we will get the username, and we are going to simply pass that username over here. Okay, and then we are going to return this as the response. Now let's test this endpoint. Okay, so now we have two beans of this authentication provider, so we need to resolve the ambiguity. So we are going to give the different name over here. Okay, and we'll go to the security config, and over here we are going to use the qualifier, and we are going to copy the name that we have passed over here, and we're going to paste it in this qualifier. Okay, now let's start the application. Let's also add the name of this DAO authentication provider. Okay, so we have not created this authentication entry point, so let's create this also. So let's create one authentication auth entry point. Okay, and this is going to be custom, so let's make this custom auth entry point. And this is going to implement the interface that is authentication entry point, and we're going to mark this as component. Now let's implement the method. So inside this method we are going to simply create the response. Okay, and we are going to simply return that thing. That's it. Status code, HTTP status code is going to be unauthorized. Okay, so let's check the security config once. Right, so we have added this. Now let's run this application. Okay, now this application is running. Okay, so first we are going to log in into the system. Okay, so this is the register user. Now we have to log in into the system. Okay, so we are getting this access token, and now we are going to open this secret text endpoint, and over here we are going to pass the bearer token. So we are going to paste this token only. We don't have to write this bearer, so that will be automatically added. So we are getting the response as currently logged in, and the name of the user or the username of the user. Okay, so that is working. And if we try to remove this token, and let's make it no auth, and now let's hit this endpoint, so we will get full authentication is required to access this resource. Okay, 401 unauthorized. So this is how this authentication JWT authentication flow is going to work. Now let's stop this application and make one commit. Next we are going to add the refresh endpoint to this authentication controller. Now what this refresh endpoint is going to do, it is going to provide the new pair of access and refresh token. Okay, so let's create this endpoint. So it is going to take this token refresh request, and inside this we are going to take both access and refresh token. Okay, and why we are taking both of the tokens, we are going to understand in a moment. First let us create this class. Okay, so we are taking access token and the refresh token. Now let's create this method, and this is going to return this auth response only. Let's implement this method. Now before generating the new pair of access token and refresh token, what we are going to do is we are going to check whether this refresh token belongs to same user or not, and that refresh token is same or not. Okay, so that we are going to check first. Okay, so again we are going to create one method in this JWT utils, which is going to return the claims from the token. Now what we want is that if this access token is valid, then we know that we can get the claims. But in this method, what we are going to do is, if access token is expired also, then also we want the claims. Okay, why? Because what we want is we want to get the username, and we are going to use that username to get the refresh token and check the refresh token whether it is same or not, right? So that is why we are returning this claim or the username even if the token is expired, and that is what the concept of this refresh token. So if the access token is expired, then, and if the refresh token is valid, then we can get the new access token. Okay, so that is what we need to do. So let's create this method, and this is going to return the claims only. So earlier we were throwing the exception in case of expired JWT exception, but now we are returning what? We are returning the claims, right? Now we need to get the username from the refresh token as well. So let's extract that username also. We are going to use the same method only. So we are going to check now if these username are not same, then what we are going to do is we are going to delete the refresh token from our repository so that it cannot be misused. And also we are going to throw one exception, and that is invalid refresh token. So let's create this exception. So we are going to create this in exception package, and this is going to runtime exception. We are going to extend runtime exception. Okay, now if they are same, next thing what we have to do is we need to check that whether the refresh token is same or not that system has issued. Okay, so we need to get that token from the Redis cache, right? And remember that what we have done at the time of saving the token, we have encoded the username using this base64 encoder. So again we have to do the same, right? So remember this thing, otherwise we will not be able to find the existing refresh. Now if this token is not matched, then again we are going to delete this token because we don't want this token to be misused. Okay, and we are going to throw one exception. Now if the token matches, then also we are going to delete the existing refresh token because we want just one token per user. So this is how our system is designed, right? Now we are going to delete that existing token, and now we are going to simply generate the new pair of access token and the refresh token. And how we are going to do that? Let's take this logic and let's extract it as one method so that we can reuse this method, because we have to do the same thing only, right? So we are going to extract this method, and okay, so we are going to name it as get auth response only. And now in this refresh token, we just need to provide the authenticated token. So we can use this get auth response, and we need to provide the authenticated token. So what it needs the username, so we can provide the username, and we want what we need the roles, right? So that we can get from the claims. So we have the claims object also, so we can use JWT utils and we can extract the authority, right? And then we can simply return this. So we will have a new pair of access token and the refresh token. Now let's test this endpoint. Okay, first we have to log in into the system. We are going to copy this response and we are going to paste as the body of this refresh token endpoint. Okay, and we can remove this extra fields and let's hit this endpoint. Okay, so we are getting new access and refresh token. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's change the token over here. Now let's hit this endpoint. Okay, so we are getting the exception that token identity mismatch, right? Now let's again copy this and paste it over here. We are going to, okay, so token not found for this user. So first we have to log in into the system. Then we need to copy this and paste it over here. Can remove these extra fields. Now we have the new token. So let me copy this and we are going to access this secret text endpoint. Okay, so we are getting that currently logged in as null. That means we are not getting the proper username in this. So let's check this access token. Let's copy this and we are going to paste over here in this JWT debugger. Okay, so this is generated properly. Let's check the logic that what we are missing. Let's again hit this endpoint. So first we are going to log in and then we are going to copy this and paste it over here. Okay, so we have this username over here. So there is no issue in that. Let's step into it. Right, so over here, because of this logic, this username is going blank. Okay, so that we don't want. Okay, let's fix this. So let's create one method and this method is going to check. We are going to pass the authentication token and it is going to check the type of principal. So if the type is app user, so it is going to use this app user dot get username to get the username, and if it is type of string only, then we are going to simply return that, and in case of null or the default case, we are returning the blank. Okay, so let's use this, and over here we have to make this change for this roles also. So instead of returning the empty list, what we can do is we can use this authentication token and we can get the authorities. Okay, so let's change this. Okay, right, now I think it is fixed. Let me run this application. Let's again log in into the system and now let's generate the new pair of tokens. Right, so we are going to copy this and paste it over here. Okay, so we are getting full authentication is required. So let me again copy this and paste it over here. So this is not working. Let's check. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's get back to this auth service and we need to fix this logic. Let's create another method like this get username. Now over here we are going to check whether this principal is app user, so we are going to return this get authorities. Okay, and if it is type, if the principal is type of a string, then that means we are simply passing the username. Then we are going to use this authentication token only, otherwise we are going to return the empty list. Okay, so let's use this method over here. So we need to change the type of this. Now we have to make some changes to this generate access token also. So we are not going to pass this list of rules. We are going to pass the collection of this granted authorities. So let's make these changes. Okay, now let's rerun this application. Now let's again log in into the system. Right, we have the access token. We are going to copy this whole response and paste it over here. Let's generate new pair of access and refresh token. Okay, so we are getting error over here only. So let's fix this. Right, so we are getting error from this extract authorities method. Okay, let's stop this application, and what this token is expecting, so it is expecting this collection of granted authorities. Okay, right, so this is the problem. We are getting the list, array list, and then inside that we have the linked hash map. Okay, so that is the problem. Now let's fix this. Now let's open this JWT utils and let's go to this generate token method, and let's see that what we are doing wrong over here. Okay, right? So we are getting the collection of this authority, granted authority, and before passing, before adding this to claims, what we need to do is we need to convert this into list of string, right? So let's do that. Okay, so we are going to create one stream, and we are going to map this using the simple method reference. We are going to use this method, that is get authority, and that is it, and we can convert this into list. Okay, now let's rerun this application. Again, log in into the system. Okay, so it is not working, right? So now it is started. Okay, let's copy this and paste it over here. Right, now let's check again. So this time we are getting proper list of it. Okay, now we have the new access token. Let me copy this and paste it over here. Right, so now it is working fine. So we are getting this name of the logged in user. Okay, now let's stop this application and make one commit. Right, so currently we are not using this role field. So for using this role field, what we are going to do is we are going to implement the method security. So let's open this text controller, and over here we are going to add one more method. So this is going to be get anonymous, get secret text for anonymous, or we can make this as the guest. Right, now we are going to use one annotation, and that is pre-authorize annotation, and over here we are going to use one expression that is has role, and we are going to pass the role, and that is user. Now in order to access this secret text, we want the user which is having this role, user role. Okay, and if the user is logged in as a guest, so he will not be able to access this endpoint, right? So that we want. Okay, now let's also change the endpoint for this. So let's make it as the anonymous. Okay, now let's run this application and test this out. Let's copy this, and now this time let's use this anonymous endpoint, and we are going to pass the token over here. Okay, so you can see that we are able to access this endpoint also, and if we pass the token over here, then we can access this endpoint. Right, now if we logged in as the guest, so we will not be able to access this endpoint. So let's create one anonymous login endpoint. So let us open this authentication controller, and let's create one anonymous login. Okay, so we are not going to pass any details. We are just going to generate one access and refresh token for this guest user or the anonymous user, right? So let's create this method, and this is going to return the auth response. Okay, let's implement this method. Okay, so we are going to create one list of roles, and inside that we are going to add this guest role. Okay, and for username we are going to generate one random ID. That's it. Okay, and then we are going to simply generate this response, and we are going to return it. Now let's run this application. Okay, and we're not going to log in as a normal user. We are going to do the anonymous login. Okay, so we have the access to, and if we are going to paste it in the debugger, JWT debugger, then you can see that we are getting the role as guest, and the subject is a random ID, right? Now let's try to access this secret endpoint. Okay, so this method can only be, this endpoint can only be accessed by normal user, not the guest user. But you see that we are able to access this endpoint. That means our method security is not enabled. Okay, so we have missed one thing, and that is very important annotation, and that we can add either over here, or we can add it in the security config. So let's add one annotation, and that is enable method security. Okay, Now let's restart this application. Let's again hit this same endpoint, and now you can see that we are getting access denied. So this guest user cannot access this endpoint, and if we use this normal user token, then you can see that we are getting the response from this endpoint. Okay, so that is how we can use this role that we are adding to the claims of or the payload of this token. Okay, now let's make one commit. Now we are going to Dockerize this whole authentication server. So let's create one more profile. So we are going to copy this, and we are going to create one more profile, that is the Docker profile. And over here we are going to make some changes. So we are going to add the server address, okay, and we are going to change the port also. So let's make it 9090, right? So this is the Docker configuration. We are not going to change a lot of things. Okay, now let's create one Docker file for this authentication server. Okay, so we are going to use this JDK Eclipse JDK. Okay, and then we are going to simply copy the jar file, and that's how we simply run the jar file. And we are exposing this port, that is 9090, because we want to access our application. Okay, so this is a simple Docker file, nothing complex. Now let's understand that how we are going to pack all the things, that we are using the Redis, we are using the PostgreSQL, and this auth server application. So how we are going to pack all the things, and we can make use of Docker Compose, and we can run our application. Okay, so let's understand that. So let's create one file. So this file is going to be Docker Compose. Okay, so first we are going to add this auth server service, right? Okay, so what we want is we want to build the image if it is not present. So we want to build using this Docker file. Then we are exposing this port 9090, and this service auth server is dependent on two services, AuthDB and the cache. Okay, and it is using this backend net. We are using this network so that these three services, these three instances can easily communicate with each other. Okay, then over here we are setting the environment variables that we need, right? So let's do one thing. Let's open this application.docker file in a split view, and here we can open this Docker Compose file, and let's check whether these environment variables are correct or not. Okay, now how this Docker Compose is going to get these value. So again, it is going to use this env file only. So what we can do is over here we can provide all these values. Okay, so I think almost everything is same. Let's check this. So we're going to open this in split view. So we have db URL, we have db username, then password, key, and host and port for Redis. Okay, so everything is there in this env file, right? So this authentication server is done. Now let's add the auth db. So we are going to use this Postgres image. Okay, and we need to provide some environment variables. Now we are going to make a change over here. So instead of this db user, we are going to pass db username. Instead of db pass, we are going to pass db password, right? And the name of this default database is going to be auth.db. Okay, and we are also creating one volume, and we are exposing this default port. Okay, so this is the auth.db. Now let's add the cache. So this is going to be a Redis cache. Okay, and over here we don't have to do much thing. Okay, we're keeping it simple. Now let's create two things. First, we're going to create the network. Okay, so name of our network is backend net. Okay, and we want to bridge with the host network. So that is why we are using the driver as bridge. Now we want the volume also. So let's create one volume. Okay, so I think we are done with this Docker Compose file. Now let's run this file. Okay, so first let us create this jar file. So we need this terminal. Let's open this and we're going to package this application. Okay, so we can remove the test or we can skip the test. So let's remove this file only because we have not added any kind of test, so we don't need them, right? So now this file is generated. Now let's again run this. Okay, so db user and db pass is not set. Okay, so over here we have to change the variable name. This is going to be db password, right? Now let's again rerun this. Now all three services are up and running. So this auth server is started. Okay, so we are getting some error over here. Let's see, let's check. So first let me stop these instances that we were using for the development. Now let me again run this docker compose file. Right, so this time we can see that our application is running. So make sure that you stop the instances that we are using for the development. Otherwise, we can change the code, right? So that was creating the problem. Now let us test this. Okay, so over here we are going to open the collection and we are going to change the base URL. So we are going to change it to 1990, right? So first we are going to register the user. So let's register one user. Okay, so this is successful. Now let's again hit the same endpoint. So this time we are getting that this username is already present. Okay, and let's log in. Okay, so we are getting bad credentials. So what we have registered, so we have registered with Akshay 2. So we need to change the username over here. Okay, so we are getting this access token. Then can use this access token over here, right? And we can also access this anonymous endpoint also. Okay, and now we can also refresh the token. Okay, so let's copy this, right? So we have the new set of tokens. So let's check them also. Okay, so it is working perfectly fine. Now let us also check this anonymous login, right? So this anonymous endpoint is working, and if we place the token over here, so we'll get the access denied, right? So everything is working as we have developed, right? So this is the end of this long video on JWT authentication server. I hope you found this informative. Do like the video to help the algorithm, and also comment what improvement can be done or what topics you want to see in the future. Also share this with your friends and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you have not subscribed yet. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video.